Hello, my lovely nerds. My name is Cryptic Kitten. I hope that you guys are having a great day today, wherever you are. We are here to talk about the magical, the mythical, and the macabre in folklore, mythology, and the media. Today's tale is about a vampiric demon that you might have heard of if you watched the first season of The Witcher on Netflix. Although The Witcher's adaptation is fairly different from the actual mythology. And this demon is called the Striga. Does that sound familiar? Before we dive into the Striga and Witcher lore, we do have to talk about where the Striga originated in real life. Although the word Striga derives from the Strix from ancient Roman and Greek mythology, which was described as a creature that fed on human flesh and blood, the people of Poland transformed the word into Striga for their folklore. The Striga in Slavic mythology is said to be a female demon that is born with 2 hearts, 2 souls, and 2 sets of teeth. There are some other odd reasons why people would think that a person would become a Striga. One being not having any armpit hair. A newborn child with already developed teeth, which, is that a thing? That's not a thing, right? I'm sure that's not a thing that babies are born with sets of teeth already. Also, during epidemics at the time, people were getting buried alive, mainly because they would be so sickly that people would probably presume that they were dead, which is insane to me. Like, could you imagine being someone sick and the people around you decide to bury you alive? I couldn't imagine the horror that would happen waking up like that. You probably would be awake too. You probably just were so sick you couldn't even fight off what was happening. But people who were able to get out of their graves, barely well enough to move, their hands tattered and bruised and torn up from having to claw their way out of the ground, were also said to be Striga, which is the plural version of the Striga. And I do have to give them props for being able to dig themselves out of a grave, despite how sick they are. That had a lot of determination. Another thing I thought about is, could you imagine being the people on the other side of the situation and seeing a body dig itself out of a grave? Like, people had to have thought that these were zombies. Well, actually, people thought they were Strigas, but I'm sure that just seems like a zombie situation. So the initial indicator that someone was born a Striga was when a child had 2 sets of teeth, although fairly faint. This child would be exiled from their community and forced to live in the woods, which would inevitably kill them. The first soul was the human soul, which would go to the afterlife, and the second soul was the Striga, who stayed on Earth. She would stay and camp out in very creepy areas. Think of very dark, you just got an eerie feeling when you got there. I'm thinking swamps, maybe graveyards, or just creepy dark woods. When you laid your eyes upon a Striga, you would see a woman who had grayish blue skin, who seemed to have developed owl-like features, such as talons, wings, eyes with increased night vision. Also, fun fact, did you know that owls' eye colors can determine their hunting preferences? It's said that owls that hunt at night tend to have darker eyes, and owls that tend to hunt in the morning or dawn tend to have orange or yellow eyes. I thought that was really interesting. Another characteristic of the Striga is that they had a golden beak, and I'll tell you what they do with that beak. You wouldn't really lay your eyes on a Striga for too long because the Striga needs its life force in order to stay alive. And while she might go for animals first, this is not enough to satiate her hunger. She desires the life force of humans. First, she'll go to the people who wronged her when she was living, such as the people who were responsible for her exiling. But after that, any innocent person that was unfortunate to cross her path was destined for a horrible fate. Some of her favorite victims were also babies and young children because they had the softest skin and the most tender flesh. So what does the Striga do to you, you may ask? Well, the Striga will drain your blood with this golden beak, which is why the Striga was considered a vampiric demon. But not only will she do this, she would also disembowel her prey and devour their insides, which to me sounds almost worse than a vampire, like a regular vampire, Just think of an owl-looking woman that comes to attack you. Not only sucks your blood with her beak, but also disembowels you and eats your insides. That doesn't sound very fun to me. It's said to be apparent in Polish folklore that owls kind of have a bad rap. They're usually cast in a negative light, and I don't really blame them, because have you seen those videos of like barn owls just like moving their heads around, like super creepy? I'll show you. So you're probably wondering, how do you kill a Striga? One way to kill a Striga is said to decapitate its head. If there was someone that you believe would come back as a Striga and you were worried about that, you would decapitate their head and then bury their body separate from their head. You can burn the body, you can hammer stakes and nails into the body, you can slap it across the face with your left hand, not your right hand. It has to be your left hand. Putting small objects in the Striga's grave, which forces it to have to count every single little bit of the object in its grave. And also peeling the church bells, which would turn them into tar. To keep Strigas away, you can wear an amulet for protection, usually made of garlic. And to stop her from attacking your children and newborn babies, you can do a ritual to keep her away. Another important thing about the Striga is that it is a shapeshifter, and so it's actually really terrifying. Also, because you might just see a barn owl just flying around near you, and then all of a sudden you're being consumed. I find the Striga very interesting, and there's a lot more Slavic folklore that I want to learn about and talk to you guys about. If you're enjoying the story so far, go ahead and leave a like and comment down below if you find the Striga interesting. Now, I can't really tell which is scarier, a vampiric owl demon or an insatiable monster born of a curse, like in The Witcher. Let me explain. So first, what is the Striga in Witcher lore? You may be asking. Well, a Striga is a woman who is cursed to become a hideous monster with increased speed and strength, developing a strong hatred for all living things, and hunts and kills on a full moon with no mercy. Although not much is known of the curse specifically, one of the most well-known cursings, and the one that is showcased in the Witcher series, is of Ada the White. And this story is tea-filled. And to fully know the story of Ada the White, we need to learn about King Foltest of Temeria. Now, King Foltest was originally promised King Vesemir II's daughter, but was actually in love with his own sister, also named Ada, and ended up marrying her instead. I'm not exactly sure if Ada wanted this. If you read the books and it states that, please let me know down below. I would love to hear if she actually wanted to also marry Foltest, or if it was kind of the thing where she was forced or coerced into it. But due to this, now enters Ostrit. You see, Ostrit was in love with Ada. He was crushed because not only did she marry someone else, but she married her brother. He was upset, crushed, disgusted, and went to a witch and asked her to put a curse on him. And the witch was like, okay. He gathered all the fixings and he uttered the curse. So Ada goes into labor with her daughter, Ada the White. And unfortunately, Ada dies during labor, and she is buried with her daughter in the same tomb. 7 years later, it is proclaimed that Ada the White has been brewing inside of this tomb, becoming a Striga, a vicious killer. I like to think of it as one of those little pills that you would get as a kid that you put in water and would become like a dinosaur. This kind of makes me feel like that. But after these 7 years, the Striga begins her reign of terror. Again, the Striga kills with no mercy and hates all living things. Anything that came across her path was dead. Who knows how many people she had killed during this time before Foltest acquired the help of the Witcher Geralt of Rivia, who was hired after Foltest tried numerous times to tame Ada the White. And I'm not sure exactly how he did this or tried to do this, because how do you tame an insatiable killing machine? Don't know how he tried to do this. Maybe by giving her bait. Maybe he was giving her humans or things to eat to keep her from maybe wandering, but this seemed way too complicated for him, and so he needed some help. So Geralt has the big brain idea to make sure that the Striga does not get to her sarcophagus by the morning. Geralt uses ostrich as bait and defensively holds back the Striga until the daylight. And because she was not able to get to her sarcophagus, Geralt awakens to a human out of the white. The curse has been lifted. And although the curse has been lifted, it's safe to say that Ada is not going to grow up with a regular life. She obviously was stunted at birth. After 7 years, she had fully grown into the Striga. So even if she was a human, she only grew up to be 7 years old. She was emotionally and mentally stunted. And she also kept some of her beastly tendencies of aggression, anger. So she was not going to be able to integrate into society very well, but it is documented that she would keep an amulet that I believe Geralt gave to her in order to stay in her human form. Although not much is known of the curse, I'm pretty sure we know that Ada the White is not the only person that was unfortunately cursed this way, but this is just the most well-known case of it. It's interesting seeing the contrast between the Striga in The Witcher and the Striga in folklore, because the Striga in The Witcher is not an owl-like creature. It's actually just a very much more, I would say, typically just monstrous. She doesn't seem vampiric in any way. The things that they do have in common though are they are both insatiable and crave the consumption of human life and just life in general. Both are also exclusively female. And it's safe to say there are a lot of creatures in The Witcher that we will be talking about that are derived from actual Slavic folklore mythology. And just in any type of adaptation of media, you can't really expect the media version to be accurate to the actual mythology. Obviously, it's always derived from it. One exception that I do think of that is Until Dawn about the Wendigo. And I do have a video, an old video, about that you can check out. Maybe I'll do an updated video because that video does need to be updated. But yeah, thank you for joining me on learning about the Striga. Comment down below if there are any other things that you would like me to talk about. I'm excited to go on this journey with you guys, talking about folklore and mythology and the magical, mythical, and the macabre. I wanted to represent the Black queer folk that are into these things. It's not very represented on YouTube, which is fine as far as like everyone's valid. But I just wanted to see some more representation of there are people that look like me that are very much into this. I know that I would find my tribe on YouTube. But I will see you guys later. Bye.